AITA for setting a legal trap when my parents try to steal my house. My name is Miles Rossi. I am 28 years old. I need to give you some context because this level of family conflict does not happen overnight. My family has Italian roots. My grandparents, Anthony and Rosa, arrived in Georgia, United States, in 1962 with nothing more than some suitcases and pure determination. They bought an old Victorian house in Covington and spent 40 years pouring everything they had into that place. It was a 4-bedroom house with a wraparound porch and hand-carved railings that my grandpa made himself. The man could fix anything. Grandma kept a vegetable garden in the backyard that fed half the neighborhood. They raised my dad in that house, watched him grow up, move away, and slowly stop visiting. And in the end, they grew old there together while everyone else forgot about them. When they passed away 6 months apart, because Grandma refused to live without Grandpa, the inheritance was divided according to their will. My sister Elena received $95,000 in cash from the life insurance policy. I received the house. Everyone acted like Elena had won the lottery. And the truth is, the house had been deteriorating for 15 years. Grandpa was already too old to maintain it. And my dad, Vincent, could not even be bothered to drive the short distance to help his own parents. He was too busy running his insurance agency in Covington and determined to show off a status he did not have, instead of acknowledging that he came from immigrants who broke their backs their whole lives. By the time I inherited it, the house was practically uninhabitable. I walked in for the first time when the whole inheritance issue was settled and almost fell through the kitchen floor. There was black mold in every bathroom, so thick it looked like velvet glued to the walls. A crack ran through the foundation from end to end. You could easily stick your fist in it. And the wiring, which was from the 1970s according to the inspector, was so deteriorated that it could start a fire at any moment. Squirrels had practically taken over the attic. The back porch was completely collapsed. It was nothing but a pile of rotten wood and rust. The roof was leaking everywhere. The city had already sent notices saying they were going to demolish it if no one fixed it. When the inheritance appraisal was done, the house was valued at around $68,000, and most of that was just for the land. The structure itself was worth nothing. In fact, you would have to pay a fortune just to demolish it safely. Elena grabbed her cash and laughed, throwing her head back. Have fun with your fixer-upper, Miles. I am heading straight to the dealership. My mom patted her on the arm. You did the right thing, sweetie. My dad just looked at me, shook his head, and said, you should have asked for the cash. Now you are stuck with an endless project. I did not answer. I just looked at the house papers in my hands and thought about Grandpa's face the last time I saw him, how he grabbed my wrist and told me, you are the only one, Miles, the only one who understands. None of them understood. They thought Grandpa had left me the worst deal, that in the end he was not in his right mind anymore and had made a mistake. But no, he knew exactly what he was doing. He left me that house because I was the only one who truly cared about it. I was the kid who sat on his porch at 12 years old learning woodworking while he told stories from the old country. I was the teenager who drove down from Atlanta every other weekend to mow his lawn and check the boiler. And I was the adult who took vacation days to clean the gutters while my sister uploaded photos from the beach in Destin. Elena did not even go to his funeral. She was in Nashville at a bachelorette party and said she could not get a flight back. That was a lie. I checked. There were 12 flights that day. She simply did not want to ruin her weekend. So when Grandpa left me that disaster instead of the easy money, he was sending me a message. He trusted me to fix what my dad had let fall apart. I canceled my lease in Atlanta and moved into a tent in the backyard because the house was not safe to live in, and I got to work. It was 4 years like that, every weekend, every vacation day, and everything I earned as a structural engineer at a firm in Atlanta went straight into the house. I learned plumbing from online videos. I learned electrical work from library books. I lived on ramen and peanut butter sandwiches while I saved up to repair the foundation, which cost me $32,000. Money I did not have. I had to take out a loan against my retirement fund, a retirement savings plan that in the United States is called a 401k, and go into debt to pay for it. I also sold my truck and bought a 15-year-old one that burned oil, but at least it ran. Where was my family during all this? Telling me I was making a mistake. My dad said I should sell the place to a developer for whatever they offered and cut my losses. My mom said I was wasting my life on a pile of old wood. Elena did not say anything at all because she had not spoken to me directly in 2 years. She communicated through my parents, as if I were a foreign country that needed interpreters. Now let us skip to the present. One day the appraisal for the house arrived in the mail for $185,000. I read it 3 times to make sure I was not mistaken. Then I walked through the house I had rebuilt with my own hands, going through every room, and I could not help but smile. The original hardwood floors, which I spent weeks sanding and restoring, now shone with that golden tone. The antique bathtub I salvaged from the house itself, right before throwing away what was no longer useful and which I spent 3 entire weekends working on, looked brand new. I made the kitchen cabinets myself because contractors were asking for $18,000 and up, something I simply could not afford. The porch looked exactly like the original because I found Grandpa's blueprints in a damaged box in the attic and followed them step by step. Everything in there had hours of work put into it. Real sacrifice. The house turned out amazing. It was mine and I had earned every inch of it. But what I did not expect was what my family was going to do that Friday. I pulled into my driveway after work and found my dad's black Cadillac parked in my spot. Not on the street, in my spot, right in front of the porch steps, as if he owned the place. My mom's Lexus was right behind it. Elena's white Mercedes was parked on the lawn. They were already inside. I had given my mom the smart lock code 8 months prior, when I had shoulder surgery and needed someone to check on the house while I recovered. I asked her to water the plants. She did it once. She complained that it was too far away and stopped coming, but I never deleted the code from her phone. Of course not. I walked into my home and found them settled in as if they were going to interview me. My dad was sitting at the head of my dining table, my mom in the chair closest to him wearing that well-rehearsed expression of hurt concern. Elena was sprawled out on my couch with her designer sneakers on the cushions, scrolling through her phone. She did not look up when I walked in. She did not acknowledge my existence. She just kept swiping the screen with those acrylic nails. I put my keys on the counter. My dad cut right to the chase. He started talking about family responsibility, about how my grandparents had wanted the inheritance divided equally, about how it was wrong for one grandchild to prosper while the other struggled. He said he had looked into home equity loans and that the house could easily handle a withdrawal of $200,000 at current rates. He said I should take out the loan, give $100,000 to Elena, and keep the rest as compensation for my work. He said he had even checked with a loan officer at his bank and the paperwork could be ready in a couple of weeks. He said it as if he were presenting a business proposal, as if we were negotiating a contract, as if he had not just walked into my house uninvited to tell me what to do with my own property. And if I say no? His jaw tightened. This is not a negotiation, Miles. It is my house that I own, which I rebuilt with my own hands, I replied. You rebuilt it with family money. It is family property. You owe it to us. At that moment, I could not take it anymore. Everything I had been holding back came out all at once. What are you talking about? I said firmly. The inheritance has already been distributed. Everyone got their share. I looked at them one by one without lowering my voice. I was the one who got stuck with this house in pieces, the one who spent years fixing it, putting time, effort, and money I did not even have into it. And now it turns out I have to go into debt to give more money to my sister? I shook my head. It does not make any sense. This house is mine. I earned it. I do not owe you anything. I said it directly. Get out. I do not want you here. The room fell silent. My mom froze. Elena looked up from her phone for the first time. Who exactly is supposed to be struggling here? I said calmer, but firm. Because the way I see it, the one who spent months eating ramen to be able to fix the foundation was me. The one who went into debt and is still paying it off is me. Elena scoffed. She said I was exaggerating, that all of that had been my decision, that no one forced me to live like that for an old house, that I could have sold the place from the beginning, like Dad said, and split the money with her like a normal brother would do. I looked at her. And what did you do with your $95,000? She said that was beside the point. Of course it is, I replied. You went through all of it in less than 2 years. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. The car you crashed after 8 months, the Mercedes you bought later, the apartment in Midtown, the trips, the designer items you posted on social media. She went quiet. That was your decision, I told her. My mom started crying with that exaggerated weeping she always used when she wanted to bend someone to her will. She said Elena was struggling with debt, that as the older brother I had to help, that it was what my grandparents would have wanted. I shook my head. Stop using my grandparents to make me feel guilty. If they had wanted her to have the house, they would have left it to her. They did not. My dad stood up. My dad had always been like this, big, dominant, used to people backing down. 30 years running his business through pressure and expecting it to work the same way with me. You are going to take out that loan, he said, and you are going to give your sister what she deserves, as if it were already decided. I laughed. You must be mistaken. Excuse me? You heard me. Get out of my house before I call the sheriff's department. He stepped up until he was inches from me. You are ungrateful. We did not raise you to be so self-centered. We stood there like that for a long moment, him testing how far to push, me not moving. My mom grabbed his arm and whispered something to him. The tension broke. On his way out, he called me a disappointment. He said my grandparents would be ashamed. Grandpa left me this house precisely so it would not end up in your hands, I replied. The color rushed to his face. He tensed up again, but this time he did not step forward. He just pointed at me. This is not over. You have no idea what you just started. They left. Elena pushed past me as she walked by, as if we were still in middle school. I closed the door, and the first thing I did was change the smart lock code. Then I sat in my kitchen and drank 3 glasses of water. I do not drink alcohol, and I needed something to do with my hands. I did not sleep that night, not out of fear, but because I was thinking about what was coming next. I knew my dad. He did not make threats he was not willing to carry out. I knew he was not going to just sit on his hands. Sooner or later, he was going to make a move, and when he did, he would mean business. Whatever was coming, I needed to be prepared. And it did not take long. The lawyer's letter arrived 4 days later. They sent it via certified mail, the kind you have to sign for when you receive it. The envelope was thick and clearly expensive, which made it obvious that my dad was already putting real money into this. The letter accused me of fraud. It claimed that I had manipulated the whole inheritance process to make the house seem worth less so I could keep it for my own benefit. It also claimed there was an alleged verbal agreement that I was going to share the house's value with my sister once I finished fixing it up. It demanded that I establish something called a constructive trust, which would give Elena a 50% stake in my home. If I did not accept, they were going to sue me and place a legal hold on the property that would prevent me from selling it, refinancing it, or doing anything with it until everything was resolved, and that could take years. I read the letter twice. Then I called the only person I knew who would understand how absurd the whole situation was. Marcus had been my best friend since senior year of high school. We went to college together in Georgia. We pulled all-nighters studying and helped each other move more times than either of us can count. Now he was a lawyer. He worked with contracts and had recently left his firm to open his own practice in Decatur, Georgia. He did not handle real estate cases, but he knew people who did. We met up at a wing spot. I told him everything, the inheritance, the house, the renovations, the way they showed up that day, and the letter. He read it, and then put it down on the table. He told me that what they were trying to do had no basis. To ask for something like that, they would have to prove there was some agreement, even a verbal one, that I was going to keep the house for my sister too. And that never happened. In fact, I had text messages from 3 years ago where Elena told me to enjoy my fixer-upper because she was happy with the money she had received. The will was clear, the whole inheritance matter was already closed. The appraisal had been done by an independent company, not someone from the family. On paper, the case was straightforward. I should win it without a problem. But Marcus also warned me about something. When family gets involved in lawsuits, things change, they become personal, emotional, and difficult. Sometimes judges try to split things up so nobody walks away completely empty-handed. And if my dad was willing to spend money on lawyers, he could drag this out for 3 or 4 years. Even if I won. And everything pointed to the fact that I would. I could end up spending $50,000 or more just on lawyer fees. I asked him what I should do. He told me I needed someone more aggressive than me to handle this. He knew a real estate lawyer named Diane, famous for not letting anything slide. She did not take cases she could not win, and the ones she took, she won. If my family wanted a fight, she was exactly the person I needed on my side. I called her office the next morning. Diane worked out of a remodeled old house in downtown Decatur. She was about 50 years old and had that look that made you wonder if you had done something wrong. I brought the whole will, the inheritance paperwork, 3 binders full of renovation receipts sorted by date and type, before and after photos, texts, emails, everything I had accumulated over 4 years working on that house. She spent almost an hour and a half reviewing it all, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When she finished, she looked up and asked me a single question. Who was in charge of distributing your grandparents' inheritance? My dad, I told her. She smiled. And he signed the original appraisal. The one that said the house was worth $68,000. Yes, I replied. Perfect. She leaned back in her chair. Your dad just got himself into serious trouble. He himself signed off that the value was correct, and now he is claiming it was a fraud. Do you know what that means? That he is getting himself into trouble. Exactly. He is digging his own grave. The question is, do you want to push him further or let him off the hook? I did not think about it for even 2 seconds. Let us push it all the way. Then she explained something simple to me. My dad had officially signed that everything was done correctly when the inheritance was distributed. He had given his word that everything was fair. If he was now saying the appraisal was fake, only 2 things could happen. Either he knew it was wrong from the beginning and still approved it, or he did not do his job properly when he was supposed to oversee it. In either case, the problem was his. If we pushed hard enough, his own lawsuit could backfire on him and even bring him more serious legal trouble. I asked her what we should do. She answered without hesitation. We were going to counter and make them regret ever putting all of that in writing. In less than a week, she filed a motion asking the judge to officially declare that the house belonged exclusively to me. Furthermore, she sent an 11-page letter to my family's lawyer, basically tearing their case apart from a legal standpoint. In that letter, she explained in full detail that if they insisted on moving forward with the lawsuit, my dad could face serious legal consequences, including liability for breach of fiduciary duty. In other words, pushing further was not just going to fail, it could blow up in their faces. The message was clear. The best thing they could do was to stop and reconsider if they really wanted to continue down that path. After that, everything went quiet for about 10 days. During that time, I decided to prepare myself. I installed a security camera system around the property for cameras with night vision and motion detection, all connected to the cloud to save the recordings. I had a gut feeling I was going to need them, and I was not wrong. Wayne was a retired Marine who lived in the blue craftsman-style house 2 doors down from mine, along with his wife Evelyn. We had become friends over the last year. I had helped him track down parts to restore his Mustang, and he had given me a hand putting up drywall when I injured my shoulder. He was 63 years old and had an imposing physique, solid as a rock. Evelyn, on the other hand, was the complete opposite, kind, warm, always showing up with freshly baked banana bread. She was one of those neighbors who remembers everyone's birthday. It was Wayne who called me at work on a Wednesday afternoon. He told me there was a moving truck parked in my driveway, that 2 men in work clothes were carrying furniture out of my house, and that my dad was on the porch overseeing everything. I did not hesitate. I told my manager I had a family emergency and left immediately. I drove back home well over the speed limit. When I arrived, I saw exactly what Wayne had described to me. A rental truck in the driveway, 2 men in gray overalls carrying my couch down the porch steps, and my dad standing at the door with a clipboard in his hand, checking things off a list as if he were organizing a normal move. Later I understood how they had managed to get in. The smart lock code was not as secure as I thought. At first, I had used my mom's birthday, and when I decided to change it, just to avoid overthinking it, I simply swapped it for mine. An obvious, predictable change. My mom only had to try family dates until she found the right one, and she did. It was a mistake on my part that I would not make again. Wayne was on the sidewalk with his arms crossed. He had positioned himself near the end of the driveway in a strategic spot. Anyone trying to leave would have to go through him first. I got out of the car and walked straight toward the house. What do you think you were doing? My dad did not even look up. He kept checking his clipboard as if I was not there. I am recovering family assets. Keep loading, boys. Put my couch down right now, I said, raising my voice. One of the movers hesitated. My dad, without looking at him, yelled at him to keep going. Do you have a court order? I asked. It is in process. So you do not have one, I replied, turning to the movers. If you touch a single other thing in my house, I am pressing charges for trespassing and theft, and your company loses its license. You decide. The man looked at my dad, then at me, and finally at Wayne, who had already gotten close enough to make his presence clear. He hesitated for a second and let go of his side of the couch. His partner did the same. They climbed into the cab, started the engine, and tried to leave. Wayne planted himself right in front of the vehicle. Motionless. The driver honked the horn. Wayne did not even flinch. "Let them go," I told him. Wayne stepped aside unhurriedly, and the truck drove away. I already had everything I needed, the name of the company, the license plate, and everything recorded on video. Then, my dad finally turned to face me. His face was red with anger. He said I was making a huge mistake, that he had tried to resolve this privately as a family matter, but if I wanted to do things the hard way, he was going to make this very difficult. I pulled out my phone and showed him the security camera footage. For different angles, crystal clear, the unauthorized entry, the attempt to take my things, and his own admission that he did not have a court order, all backed up to the cloud. "Do you want to keep making threats, or do you prefer to leave before I call the sheriff's department?" He left after that, but barely 30 seconds later, Elena showed up. She must have been waiting around the corner, watching the situation, because she pulled her Mercedes right onto the lawn and jumped out. She saw the couch still on the grass. She saw our dad's car driving away and started yelling. She hurled insults and accusations, and when my sister got mad, she had a lot to say. Then she got more direct. "You manipulated Grandpa when he was dying. You turned them against us. You probably even influenced the will yourself. And that is coming from the person who did not go to her grandfather's funeral. You were in Nashville partying at some event," I replied. "I could not get a flight. There were 12 that day, Elena." I checked. She went silent. Her face tightened. "You always thought you were better than me, the good grandson, the perfect son, and in the end, you are nothing but a lucky thief," she told me. "Get off my property. You have 10 seconds. Or what? Or I call the police for trespassing. I am sure showing up on a police report would not be very helpful for you." The color drained from her face for a moment. Then she composed herself. She said she was going to make me regret it, that she would ruin my reputation, that she would make sure I never had a single day of peace again. I looked at her calmly. The people who matter already know perfectly well who is who in all of this. I pointed around her. "Look at yourself. You were standing on the lawn of a house you made fun of 4 years ago, trying to take furniture from a brother you have not spoken to in 2 years, while your own life falls apart." I paused. "The only reputation being damaged today is yours." She did not know what to say. She stood there with her mouth half open, searching for words that did not come. In the end, she turned around, got into her car, and drove off, spinning her tires on my grass. Wayne watched her drive away. Then he looked at me. "That is the most dysfunctional family I have seen in my life," he said. I thanked him for having my back. He shrugged. "That is what neighbors are for," and went back to his Mustang as if nothing had happened. Inside the house, the damage was obvious. The movers had scratched the hardwood floor. 6 months of work ruined in 20 minutes. I spent the rest of the night sanding and resealing it. It was better than thinking about what my family had become, or what they had perhaps always been. 2 weeks after the moving truck incident, Marcus called me with news. He had been digging around because something in my sister's story did not add up. She claimed to be broke, struggling with debt, unable to pay rent, but she drove a new Mercedes. She traveled to expensive places and wore designer clothes. So he started pulling the thread: phone calls, public records, contacts, and what he found changed everything. Elena was not broke. She was married. She had gotten married 14 months earlier in a quiet ceremony at the Fulton County Courthouse. No announcement, no celebration, without anyone knowing, except for 2 people, my parents. They had been the only witnesses. They knew everything from the start. The husband was Hudson Harrington IV, part of a family with a major real estate development company in North Georgia. Serious money. But it was not that simple. Hudson's income came from a family trust fund that paid him monthly, and that money came with very clear conditions. If he married without his family's approval, his income would be reduced, and if his wife had significant assets or came from a family with money, he could lose it completely. Furthermore, that trust was reviewed every year, not just for him, but also for his wife. That is when everything clicked into place. Elena had fabricated a complete lie to get into that family. She made them believe she came from nothing, that our parents were barely getting by with their insurance business, that there was no inheritance, no money, no safety net. She even went as far as hinting at health issues with my mom to reinforce the story. She sold herself as a self-made woman. None of that was true. My dad's agency was profitable. My mom was perfectly fine, and she had already gone through the $95,000 of inheritance money unchecked. She was not desperate. She was hiding something, and that was when it all made sense. She did not want the house. She wanted the money, but without leaving a trace. She needed cash that would not show up on any record, untraceable when the trust lawyers reviewed her finances. That is why they wanted me to take out a loan. That is why they insisted I hand it over to her directly. That way she could use it without it appearing under her name, without raising suspicions, and without risking the money she received from her husband. It was not about need. It was covering up a lie. If that money came to light, her whole story would fall apart. It was never about family fairness or fulfilling my grandparents' wishes. It was about deception, and my parents were in on it. They had been at the wedding. They had lied about our economic situation and were trying to force me to participate without me knowing. I sat there for a long while processing it all. I thought about calling them, confronting them, but I knew exactly how that would end. They would deny it, twist it, turn it around to make it my fault. So I did the only logical thing. I called Diane, explained everything Marcus had found out, and asked her if we could use it. She took a moment before answering, but when she did, she was clear. This changed the case entirely. If my sister was claiming financial hardship to justify her lawsuit, she would have to prove it under oath. And if she lied about her real situation or her marital status, that was not just a strategy, it was perjury. In less than a week, Diane filed a motion to demand full financial disclosure, bank accounts, credit cards, assets, everything. My family's lawyer tried to block it, but Diane dismantled every single one of his arguments. The judge granted it and scheduled a deposition. The deposition was scheduled for a Thursday morning at Diane's office. It was not a trial, but a formal interview under oath where everything was recorded to be used later in front of a judge. Elena's lawyer seemed out of his depth, and he knew it. My dad and Elena showed up. My mom did not. I stayed in a corner of the conference room watching. Diane started with simple questions. Living situation, income, monthly expenses. She let her talk. Elena told her story smoothly. That she could barely pay rent, that she was behind on credit cards, that she lived under constant pressure while her brother enjoyed a beautiful home. She did it well, too well. Her voice cracked at just the right moment. Her eyes welled up with tears when it suited her. She had been rehearsing that role for a while. Then, Diane changed course. She asked about her marital status. For a split second, Elena tensed up. Just a flinch, but enough. Diane did not say anything else. She just pulled out the marriage certificate and placed it on the table. The silence did the rest. Elena looked at her lawyer, then at my dad. She had no way out. She admitted she was married. She tried to justify it as a private matter, something irrelevant to the case. Diane did not argue. She simply moved on. And that was where everything started to fall apart. She moved on to her husband's income, the trust fund, the monthly distributions, the conditions, the financial reviews. Elena's lawyer tried to stop the line of questioning, claiming it was irrelevant. Diane did not stop. She pointed out that if Elena was claiming financial hardship, any source of financial support was directly relevant. She had it noted on the record. There were clear legal grounds supporting that stance, and Elena's lawyer knew it. Elena had to answer. She tried to be vague, but it did not work. Diane boxed her in little by little, forcing her to be specific. Hudson received around $8,000 a month. Elena did not have direct access to the money, but she lived in a property paid for by him and drove a vehicle covered by those funds. When Diane asked about her personal expenses, Elena hesitated. She mentioned credit card debts from before the marriage. Diane asked for numbers. Elena said she could not remember them exactly. Then, Diane pulled out the financial disclosure forms Elena had submitted with the original lawsuit, legal documents in which she had stated, under oath and with the obligation to tell the truth, that she had $67,000 in credit card debt and no significant assets or income. She asked her if those figures were still accurate. Elena looked at her lawyer. He nodded. She said yes. Diane did not respond immediately. She opened a folder and slid it across the table. Inside were credit card statements, bank records, and documents obtained through subpoenas to various financial institutions. The numbers told a different story. 3 days after the wedding, Hudson had paid off $45,000 of Elena's debt as a gift. The remaining balance was $11,800. It was not pocket change, but it was far from someone drowning in debt, and that was not all. The records also showed monthly deposits into her personal account from a joint account with Hudson between $1,000 and $2,000 a month for over a year. Steady money, undeclared money. At that point, the hardship narrative fell apart. Diane was direct. She asked her to explain why she had declared a $67,000 debt when the real amount was much lower. She also asked why she had omitted her marriage, her husband's income, and the existence of that joint account. Elena's lawyer asked for a recess. They were outside for over an hour. When they came back, everything had changed. Elena looked defeated, with no trace of the confidence she had shown earlier. Her lawyer avoided looking at us. My dad remained stiffly silent. Then came the surrender. The lawyer announced they were withdrawing all claims, closing the lawsuit permanently, which meant they could not file it again. No conditions, no negotiation. In exchange, he asked that no perjury charges be filed. Diane looked at me. I thought about it for a moment. I want a written apology, I said, signed by all three of them, admitting they made false statements and tried to mislead me. My dad reacted instantly. Absolutely not, never. Diane cut him off without raising her voice. She made it clear to him, point by point, what had just happened. He had lied under oath in a legal proceeding. He had participated in an attempt to seize property with witnesses present. She also explained what could happen if all of that went before a judge, since that deposition, even though it was not a trial, carried the same weight. She did not raise her voice. She did not have to. The silence that followed was enough. My dad's expression changed several times before he gave in. He asked for the document. They signed without arguing. My dad walked out without looking at me. Elena, on the other hand, stopped at the door. "This is not over," she said. "I am never going to forgive you." I looked at her. "I do not need your forgiveness." She slammed the door. The following week, I filed for a protective order. With all the accumulated documentation, the process was quick. Diane handled everything. The hearing lasted less than an hour. The judge granted a full protection order. My dad, my mom, and my sister could not come within 500 feet of me or my property. They also could not contact me through any means or do it through third parties. Any violation would result in immediate arrest. They did not violate it. Instead, they fell apart. Marcus kept me in the loop. To him, the whole thing was almost a spectacle. My dad's insurance agency started to suffer when the news of the protective order began to circulate. In a town like Covington, that kind of information does not take long to get around. And when people started finding out that his own son had to resort to the justice system to protect himself from his family, the question started. My dad lost 3 of his biggest clients in less than 4 months. He had to fire 2 employees and move to a smaller office. He even stopped being welcome at the golf club he used to go to. A reputation built over 30 years crumbled in a matter of months. My mom stopped going to her garden club meetings. Too many stares, too many awkward silences when she walked in. She started saying that I had been manipulated by outside influences that had turned me against the family. The funny thing is, I did not even have a girlfriend at the time. Elena's marriage lasted barely 8 more months. Her husband's family ended up finding out the whole truth, the lies about her background, the hidden debts, and the attempt to get money out of me in secret. One of the lawyers found the signed apology during a document review, and that ended up destroying everything. The prenuptial agreement had a fraud clause. When they enforced it, Elena was left with nothing, just her clothes and whatever little she managed to fit in her car. The last thing Marcus heard was that she was living in a small apartment working in property management. There was no more Mercedes, no more trips, no more luxury life. In the end, my family ended up facing exactly the consequences of their choices. They lost the respect of others, destroyed what they had built, and ended up carrying the social rejection they brought upon themselves. What happened to them after that no longer interests me. Wayne, my neighbor, finished restoring his Mustang about 6 months after everything was resolved. Cherry red, with white stripes. A beauty. Sometimes he lets me drive it when I help him around his house. Evelyn still brings me banana bread every time she bakes. Quietly, They became the closest thing to a family I have today. Marcus drives down to visit me every few weeks. We grill out in the backyard, talk about life, and he always ends up laughing about everything that happened. Having a friend like that, the kind who sticks around when things get tough, is worth more than any amount of money. 2 months after the protective order went into effect, I adopted my dog Riley. She is an Australian Shepherd mix with one blue eye and one brown eye. She is missing part of her left ear, and because of that, she had been at the shelter for weeks without anyone wanting her. She was sitting in silence, looking at me with a mix of exhaustion and hope. I took her home that same day. It turned out to be one of the best decisions of my life. She loves walking, sleeping on the couch, and barking at the squirrels in the yard. She always waits for me at the door and starts jumping the moment I arrive. The house is still standing. It is still beautiful. Last year, I planted a vegetable garden in the backyard, right in the same spot where my grandma grew tomatoes 50 years ago. I found old photos and realized that the location, the sun orientation, and even the wooden stakes to support the plants matched exactly. I like to think she would be proud. Sometimes I imagine Grandpa walking through the house, seeing that in the end, I managed to save something worthwhile. Every now and then I think about my old family, and I wonder if they ever understood what they lost. Not the money, not the house. Me. I would have helped them if they had ever treated me like I mattered, but they did not. They treated me like something they could use. And when I said no, they called me selfish. Now I am sitting on the porch. Riley is sleeping at my feet. The sun is setting slowly. A neighbor is watering the lawn. Kids ride by on their bikes. Everything is calm. Life is finally peaceful. Comment. This story really stayed with me and made me reflect deeply. Standing up for yourself and your hard work is a powerful form of self-respect. Setting clear boundaries with family is sometimes the healthiest choice you can make. Taking responsibility for your own path builds real inner strength. Learning to choose peace over endless conflict brings a kind of freedom that's hard to describe. Surrounding yourself with kind, supportive people greatly helps the healing process. You deserve to be valued and respected in every relationship. Never feel guilty for protecting your own well-being. I believe we all have the power to create a calmer and happier life for ourselves. What lesson from this one touched you the most? If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.